right. Well, thank you so much. I am going to be taking 10 minutes to talk about a little bit of what Christians should think about education, because it's not tons of time, and also because I am very prone to wander and have gone over my time both times I've spoken this weekend. I am going to do my darndest to stick straight to my notes. So my husband and I have 3 children. Our daughter was homeschooled through elementary school and then went off to public school. And then our 2 boys started in public school for elementary, and then they went on to graduate from a private Christian school. And one of the most difficult decisions we made child by child, year by year, was where to send them to school. Ultimately, we would pray about it and we would talk about it, and we just had to make the best decision we could based on what was going on in our life at the time. I'm sure many of you who have had to make that decision, who have children, or you even have grandchildren maybe, you understand the angst when it comes to that decision. As Christian parents, we're typically aware of the pros and the cons of public school education, especially the cons that we think might negatively impact our children's faith. And we are usually very aware of the pros of a Christian school education, but we're not often as aware of the potential challenges that can come, or the potential damage that might be done to our children's faith in a Christian school experience. So as I look back at my own journey as a mom and as an educator, I taught in both public and Christian schools, middle school, for several years. And when I look at where my former students are today, and even some of my own children's friends, where they are in relation to their faith, I sometimes wonder if the potential challenges are actually greater in a Christian school setting. Students aren't expecting Christian guidance in a public school, but they are expecting it at a Christian school. They naturally expect that their administrators, coaches, and teachers are going to be biblically solid and qualified, and that they're going to be living a consistent biblical life, but that's not always the case. I believe most Christian schools are started with the best of intentions, and they're run with the best of intentions. And of course, it's unreasonable to expect any school or any church to be perfect. But as parents, it's important for us to be aware that all of the ingredients for deconversion can be found in a Christian school setting as well. Our kids might experience abuses of power, legalism, hypocrisy, lack of answers to their serious doubts and questions. They might experience inconsistency in biblical interpretation and application. They might experience a lack of meaningful exposure to different and diverse worldviews. So the existence of these challenges doesn't need to be a deal breaker for us if we've prayerfully decided to put our children in a Christian school. But God holds parents primarily responsible for the faith, the training up of the faith in the faith of our children. And so with that in mind, I wanted to share a couple of suggestions. Again, this is 8 to 10 minutes, and this is not going to be exhaustive by any means. I just thought I would share a couple of suggestions on some questions that we as parents and even grandparents, we might think to ask a Christian school that will help us to just be informed. There's so much more to being informed and equipping our kids, but there are some questions we can ask, and there are some lessons I believe we can train our children to be more equipped wherever they might experience challenges to their faith. So the first question I'm going to recommend, again, I'm a former educator, so this is where this is coming from. I would ask my Christian school if they have a comprehensive scope and sequence for their Bible or spiritual formation department. And what I mean by that is a scope and sequence is an intentional plan of what will be taught, how it's going to be taught, in which order it's going to be taught in order to achieve certain benchmarks. And so basically what you're wanting to know is when my child enters this school, all the way through the time they exit, what can I expect that they're going to learn in their Bible class? It's common for most academic subjects to have a clear scope and sequence, but I really think it's important for our Bible classes as well. Not having a scope and sequence just leaves a lot of room for some negative consequences and vulnerabilities. And a lot of school websites will say in general what they're planning to do in their Bible curriculums, but I would just suggest go ask if you can see the details. For example, I taught in a Christian school for several years. I taught language arts and Bible, but in our Bible department at the time, we didn't have a scope and sequence. We didn't have that plan. I had a very clear plan for my class, for the year, for the quarter, for each individual day, very clear lesson plans. But a precious coworker of mine who loved the Lord, she took a more organic approach to teaching Bible. And she might have the students pick a psalm they enjoyed or a verse that was really speaking to them. And they would spend their time meditating on that, journaling, maybe singing some songs. Okay, so while there may be value to both of these approaches, I'm sure you can understand why, over time, winging it like this in a Christian school could leave our students confused, skeptical, biblically illiterate, and even very frustrated. So I'm not saying that having a clear scope and sequence is going to solve everything, but it will eliminate some unnecessary vulnerabilities. The second question that I recommend asking your school is just to have them clearly define what they mean by a biblical worldview. And ask them if all the teachers are aware of that. And I know this may seem like a no-brainer, but it's just important to ask. Just go ahead and ask them, because teaching from a biblical worldview is more than adding a scripture to your class or praying at the end of class. There's way more to it, and it's, as we have heard this weekend, it's possible to self-identify as a Christian and hold to a completely different, just Burger King type worldview where we syncretize, we're picking and choosing. And so some of the recent studies have shown that 65% of Americans are self-proclaimed Christians, but only 6 to 10% of them, when assessed, actually line up with a biblical worldview. So it's okay to ask these questions so that we don't find this out in the middle of a school year. So getting answers to these two questions, again, it's not everything we need to know as parents, but it will help us to adjust our expectations and to be ready to know how we might better equip our own children as they're going through a Christian school, or any school, really. So no matter where our kids go to school, there are lessons that I believe, as Christian parents, our students need in order to be way better prepared to navigate challenges to their faith. In addition to, obviously, training in worldview and apologetics, like we're all talking about this weekend, and also in addition to just regularly witnessing other people living out their faith, I would recommend these things. And as a side note, I want to say that these are the kind of things that we can lead and equip them with as we're learning them. Because as parents, we can't keep up with everything all the time. So know that we can be learning this as we teach them. The first one is, I believe our children really need to know why they can trust the Bible and how to read the Bible. The Bible is under attack like never before, even within Christian settings. And there are some very sophisticated skeptics that our kids are coming into contact with online on a regular basis. But there is robust evidence out there for the reliability, the historicity, and the trustworthiness of the Bible. And so what we would love to do is just let our kids know that that evidence is there, show them where to find it. There's apps we can put on their phones that they can get quick answers for this. We also want them to know how to read it, because a lot of the skeptical claims that they're encountering are basically, can often be found to just be because they're interpretive errors of the Bible. They're not even they're coming from false or bad interpretation. So as a language arts teacher, I spent all year long teaching my students how to read and engage with different forms of literature, nonfiction, poetry, fiction. We talked about figurative language. I helped them to understand, hey, let's focus on the audience, the author's purpose, and things like that. This is just what your kids learn in a language arts class, but for some reason we don't do those same skills when it comes to the most important book of all. And these are the same types of skills that can help them to be better interpreters and of the word, and to be able to apply it, just learning to appreciate that original audience and the context, historical, literary, the biblical context. This can help them to avoid the pain and confusion of false interpretations for themselves and unbiblical expectations of God and each other. Second, I believe that our kids need to have help distinguishing between the importance of Christian doctrines. Not all biblical teachings hold the same weight. And I heard it said once that when Christians aren't aware of this, we're apt to fight about everything or nothing. There are several ways to distinguish between the doctrines, but basically it's like looking at the Christian doctrines according to what are more essential to the gospel, what are maybe just urgent for church health, and these are usually our denominational differences. What things are important to Christian theology but not worth dividing over, and what is unimportant to our gospel witness or our ministry collaborations. A couple reasons why I find this important is because when our kids aren't aware of this, when they see any doctrinal disagreements, they're apt to think that Christians don't know anything they're talking about, or they're apt to have their faith really put through a crisis when they are exposed to a non-essential doctrine that they don't realize isn't a salvation issue, such as one of my big soapboxes is the age of the earth debate. This can really throw kids off. So I encourage those things. I'm over my time again. I'm ending. I'll conclude. I even read this and I didn't do a good job. I'm so sorry. Again, the biggest thing we can do, as it's been said all weekend, is live it out. Live a humble, real, honest Christian life in front of our kids, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the joyful. So thank you so much.